I apologise to my kids several times a week, to be honest. I thought I was going to be the sort of parent that was going to role model how to behave well. What I'm actually trying to do now is be the sort of parent that role models how to live well, and living well involves what we do when we stuff up. This is Down to Earth Conversations, where we hear from ordinary people who are helping to bring a bit of heaven down to earth.
Kia ora koutou, welcome to another episode of Down to Earth Conversations and the final episode for 2021. I'm not Andy Dixon, I'm Charlotte Cummings, here to take over the podcast with Andy as today's guest. I'm a mum and counsellor based in Ōtautahi, Christchurch, and Andy is fully aware that allowing a counsellor to take over his podcast is going to mean he may well end up bearing his soul, but luckily he's up for that. Living in the same community as Andy, I get to see his passion for doing whatever he can to equalise the playing field for people, whether that be through his role on a local school board to finding ways for their business to support important kaupapa. I've also enjoyed listening to a number of episodes of this podcast, so really respect what he has built over the last couple of years and the meaningful kōrero he facilitates for us all to enjoy. Here is episode 42 of Down to Earth Conversations. Here's Andy Dixon. So Andy, how are you feeling now that the tables have turned and you're the guest today?
Yeah, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
I'm much more comfortable on the other end of this scenario.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, fun. And I'm just looking forward to the fact that usually we get to have about like a quarter or an eighth of a conversation because most of the times we see each other there are too many children.
Yeah.
So we get to actually finish thoughts, which is like such a luxury for parents. Okay, so I'm launching right into things, and I'm keen to talk firstly about your experience of redundancy. So you've mentioned before on the podcast that this is something that you went through last year, and it is such a common experience now over the last couple of years and even over recent weeks. I want to know, how are you now, and how have you processed this roller coaster of different emotions with redundancy?
Yeah. Just thinking about how common it is. I was thinking about the other day, we've got up our driveway, there's 4 units, and one's a retiree, and the other 3 units all had people made redundant.
Wow.
So, yeah, and we've all now got jobs. We all do things, but yeah, like thinking about actually there's a lot of people in the same boat.
Yeah.
How am I? I'm actually really good. I'm in a really good place. I've had a sort of a mantra right from the start of where is the good? Going, okay, this sucks. This isn't what I would have chosen. In fact, I had a 20-year plan in place and this has killed it. But actually there's still good in the world. And where is that good, and what good things are happening while this thing that sucks is happening too. And so... yeah, so that's kind of been a bit of a journey, and as time's gone on, there's been less and less of the sucks and more of the, hey, this is going really well. So, Bex and I ended up sort of falling into running a business, which I'd never, ever thought I'd be a business owner. Wasn't on my radar, but yeah, we're loving working together. I'm loving doing a lot more parenting, getting to spend time with the kids, where I used to see them in the morning, go off to work, and then I'd come home, have dinner, put them to bed. Whereas now I'm home when they get home from school, and we juggle it a little bit, but pretty much Bex quite often carries on working while I take care of the kids, and I do all the kindy drop-offs and pick-ups and all that kind of stuff. So that's been really neat. Getting to do that with the kids that I missed out on doing some of that stuff with the girls, and so doing that with Cora has been really cool. What was the other part of the question?
How about the roller coaster? Because there have to have been days where you woke up going, I don't even know what I'm meant to do today, and this just sucks.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is that I had quite a number of times, especially early on, where I'd processed it. I'd got to the point where I'm like, okay, this is what's happening. That's okay. And then I kind of expected it to all be okay, but it actually still wasn't. And that, the next day I'd wake up and be like, actually, this is not okay. And I'd be a mess all day. And I mean, throw in the fact that, I already had anxiety and depression as part of my journey, that there's a whole lot of triggers going on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I guess, so I got made redundant from a pastoral role in a church. And we spent from when we found out in May that I was going to get made redundant, I worked through to August, but we actually stayed at the church right until Christmas.
Yeah.
And we kind of had this idea that family's family. And, okay, I might not be working in that role, but this is still our family. This is still whānau, so let's hang in there. And that would be advice I'd give to a lot of people. If they got made redundant elsewhere in their non-church jobs, actually your church can be a really good place to process that and whatever.
And to have that consistency of belonging.
Totally. That there's something going on. Not everything's changing. You're not leaving your job and your community. Whereas what I found over time was that watching other people do your job is no fun.
Yeah.
And it's like you've got a wound that's trying to heal, and every Sunday you're ripping the scab off. And it just didn't give me space to heal. Yeah. And so as much as I love those people and I love the church, we decided that we needed to move on. So, that was a gut-wrenching decision. I'm not a leaver. I'm not a quitter. In fact, this is the first time I've ever left a church for reasons other than moving cities. But it was one that, for my own health and for the health of our family, we needed to do. And then we've settled into a new community, and that's had its challenges. After 6 years of being part of shaping how a community worked, I'm now not part of shaping it, in the same kind of way. And so I'm going, well, how do I be part of this community now? What does that look like? Because I've got really used to how it did look like, and now I'm turning up and there's, I'm just like part of the machine in some ways, that this stuff's all happening whether I'm there or not. And so what does that look like? And so, it's interesting. Even then, like once I've settled in that, special times of the year or particular moments in the year have suddenly hit me like a ton of bricks. So I thought I was going really well and that I'd processed everything I needed to, and then we got to Easter. And, Easter was my big thing of the year. In my old role, I'd often, some of the other pastoral staff would be going away. So I would be shaping not only the Easter Sunday services, but the whole Lent season, which is the 40 days leading up to Easter, in terms of what does that look like as a community, and what do the services look like, especially while half the church has disappeared on holiday or, off to camp, but this is also the high point of our faith calendar, or one of the high points. And so, when I kind of turned up on Easter Sunday just expecting to be there and have another Easter message and whatever, but I just ended up bawling my eyes out because suddenly the grief of what I'd lost hit me again. And so that's happened subsequent times. We're just about to start Advent and I'm feeling a loss of that. For those who don't know, Advent's the 4 Sundays before Christmas, and it's like a journey towards Christmas. And that's been something that I've really valued and again really valued helping shape. And so this year, again, I don't get to do that in the same way. Maybe there's other ways I can look at doing that. We can do family Advent. It doesn't have to look the same all the time, but they are reminders of what I did love to do that I don't get to do anymore. And that's hard. As much as I love what I'm doing now, it still hurts not getting to do other things that I loved doing. So it is a roller coaster. It's up and down. Fortunately, there's more ups than downs these days. And that's really cool. And I've been able to maintain some good friendships from our old church as well, which has been that's been healthy. it's still it's an ongoing thing.
I don't know if you know, but I was made redundant twice from the same church, from two different roles, so I fully understand just particularly what it pushes around, hang on, I've been someone who's been contributing here to this community that I belong to, and suddenly I'm not needed in this way anymore. So I think, one of the things that often people struggle with is they can find a place of belonging if they're needed and they can contribute.
Yeah.
And so then when that bit moves, it's quite wobbly for a while, hey?
I think one of the other things was that, I was made redundant. If everything else there had stayed stable and the same, I probably could have found a place to heal and be okay. But actually, what subsequently happened was that the other pastoral staff, for different reasons, ended up moving on or retiring. And so everything changed. And so I was grappling with my own change, and I just couldn't cope with grappling with the whole change at the same time. So, I mean, there were so many elements in it that, while saying that I've processed a lot of it, I don't think I've even processed half of it, to be honest. I'm just waiting till I get triggered and then have to go and deal with it.
I think that, one of the things I found quite interesting was just it pushes all that stuff around. Am I even good at stuff? Like, am I even, was what I did not as good as I thought it was? Was I not performing in that role in some way? Am I inadequate? Am I not enough for this? Am I not a good enough person for this? And it actually just takes time to get that back.
Yeah.
And it's not until you then have other positive experience that make you go, actually, I am competent. Actually, I can contribute in really meaningful other ways.
Yeah.
And it just is so hard that it takes time to rebuild that, hey?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, they even went out of their way to say, hey, this is about the sorts of things we think we need to invest in going into the future. So it's not actually about you.
Yeah.
And yet I'm going, except you don't value the skill sets that I have, And so, like, in my head, I'm hearing them say it's not about you, but everything in me is going, but it actually is.
I was just going to say, your head can hear one thing, but your heart can just be completely disconnected from that.
So, again, I had to process a lot of that, and I think, it definitely helped having other outlets to do some of the things I loved. So, the podcast has been an amazing lifeline for me. I started it not knowing that all that was going to happen, but all that happened fairly soon into the journey, and it's been a place I can invest my desire to help people be shaped and grow and inspired and all those other things that were part of my role.
Cool.
So
now I'm going to launch into asking you, given that this is a big part of reforming yourself after a redundancy, what's Andy Dixon good at? So I see that you're a man who's done lots of things, you've been in a variety of roles, and now you're on the other side of 40. What would you say you're good at?
I'm good at learning. That's when I've done sort of the strengths finder kind of things. Learner always comes out as my top, which is no surprise because I've done like 12 years of tertiary study. So, like it's like, oh, really? But what that means is that I found I can get thrown into a bunch of different situations and actually be fine in them. So having never run a business and never desired to run a business, I was suddenly writing all of the food safety plans that we needed for our business, of which I knew nothing about before I started doing it. So, that adaptability, which it's funny thinking of myself as adaptable because I'm actually the sort of person that likes routine. I like things the same. But yet I've found I can do that if I need to. And learning, I've done a whole bunch of renovations on the house, and I never had, even really held a tool before we bought the house. And some of them have been on the fly because I started doing a renovation and found something that went wrong and had to YouTube and, learn off that. So that's been a huge thing for me is being a good learner. I think the other thing that I'm coming to realise more is actually I am good at creativity. That creativity is actually a much bigger part of my life than I've ever really given it credit for. I mean, I've been a musician since I started piano when I was 7, and I've been a musician. I've played in bands. I've had songs on the radio, a whole bunch of things, and then I've been a performance poet, and so all these things have been there. But actually, alongside that, I was doing a lot of academic writing, so I never really saw it as creative. And yet, actually, what I loved about it was that if you found the right things and put them in the right order, that was what got you the marks. That this was actually a problem-solving thing where you used creativity to form something. And so, so now I'm getting into a whole bunch of other writing things.
Cool.
I did a creative writing course earlier this year. I'm currently doing a creative business course to look at how do I do that. And I guess I'm starting to go, actually, I've got value in that area and wonder where that could go. Doing the podcast is an outlet for that creativity, because not only do I get to do the interviews, but I get to do the editing, which a lot of people hate, but actually I really enjoy. It's that kind of technical, creative, putting this together in a way that's going to make it sound good for people. And
pulling on your sound man past.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I've got some technical abilities and that as well, which helps.
Hey, do you know, with your learner strength, one of the key things that I see often people are missing in their understanding of that as a strength is that a key part of it is about learning together with others. So often people are kind of like, I love learning, I love courses, I love uni, I love books, I love all this stuff, but actually it's not a strength that's just about information and learning new things and mastering them. It's about the journey of learning together with other people, or learning, skills in your business that then are part of the team that you and Bex are, that create something that serves your family, and you're all learning. Like it is actually a strength that I often really make sure people are aware of, that part of it. It's just not learning for learning's sake. It's learning together.
And that plays into the fact that, like, I've always loved those moments, because I'm a teacher as well. I used to teach in a sports degree, and I just love teaching. But the reason I love teaching is because I'm taking things that I've learnt and then presenting them to people in a way that they grasp. And then when I see that something has clicked for them, those moments where the light bulb's gone on and they've gone, oh, I get that. Yeah. Those moments are just gold for me. And so, even like I run poetry workshops with recovering addicts is one of the things I do at the moment, and have been for about the last 5 years. And taking them from, because they have to come to my workshop, taking them from I don't want to be here, why am I doing poetry, to oh my goodness, thank you so much for coming. But cool. Seeing the shift in them realising actually they've got stuff in them that they didn't realise was there, and I've helped them tap into that. Again, that's been a real joy for me, and something again that I've found that I'm good at, that I can help other people draw out of them the things that either they're good at, or draw out of them ideas and learnings. It's and that's all meshed together with that love of learning, is that actually it's not just about me, it's about if I get all of this learning, then I can be more of a blessing to other people, and they can learn. And that's where, like, people who don't have learning as a key strength, and I'm like, why don't they get it? This is amazing. I heard this idea and it just blew my mind. Does it not blow your mind? And they're like, no, not really. Okay, sure.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I think strengths is a bit of can be a bit of a trap, because so there are 34 strengths in the Clifton Strengths Finder kind of system, and I'm a counsellor. Guess what my 34th strength is? Empathy. And so, if you ever did that test and then went, what job should this person do? Totally. Counsellor probably wouldn't come up, but actually, we can be good at things from a variety of different perspectives.
Totally.
Yeah. And so tell me, we've kind of touched on your podcast and how your creativity and love of learning comes together in this. I've been curious as I've listened along. What's your kind of vision for this? Where are you going with it?
Yeah, so I guess the heart of it, right from the word go, was that I saw particularly a whole lot of Christians who would pray the Lord's Prayer, and there's a bit in that says, "May your kingdom come, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." And I've studied that passage through my theological study, and it's really, in fact, I've got that phrase written on my leg in Greek. It means a lot to me. And then I looked and saw a whole bunch of Christians who kind of would pray that and then expect God to magically do that somehow, and would just kind of wait for that. And I thought about my life and the moments I'd been just involved in some ordinary mundane things that helped people, and how that actually felt like a bit of heaven on earth. And so that was the heart of it. It was going, hey people, I think this is way more ordinary than you think. And actually there's some really cool people but ordinary people doing some great stuff that is making a difference in the world. And so maybe this God's kingdom coming on earth thing isn't just about making sure everyone knows the 4 things they need to do to become a Christian or whatever, but is actually just when we act in the way that aligns with what God is like. And so, loving people and serving people and caring for them and bringing beauty into the world, bringing joy into the world. So, I said right from the start, if this podcast can encourage one person in that direction, it's worth it. And if that one person's me, it's still worth it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Because I've just loved it, sitting down with so many cool people, and it's given me an opportunity to say, hey person I don't know, can I sit down and have a conversation with you? Whereas normally I just wouldn't email someone from America and go, hey, do you want a Zoom chat? So I've got to talk to some awesome people, but I wouldn't have got those opportunities. So that's kind of the heart of where it started. Now I'm going, this is great. I'm really enjoying this. There's obviously just an amazing number of people that I could talk to. I hadn't really thought ahead. Someone asked me early on, where are you going to get people? I was like, I'll just ask my mates who, and for most of the first year, that's what I did. And then this year I started going, hey, well, I've got a year under my belt. There's a bit of credibility there. I'll just reach out to people and say, hey, would you be interested? And more of them have said yes than no. So that's been really cool. So that's built up my confidence. And now if I ask someone and they say no, then it's not the end of the world. And I had someone who I really would have liked to interview who'd said yes. And then on the morning of the interview, they said, actually, they're in the States. They said, my daughter just got a positive COVID test this morning. And so I'm going to have to cancel. And then I just haven't been able to get in touch with them again. They just haven't replied to anything. And so I was like, okay, well, that one's gone. But, I've got to the point where going, well, actually, that's not a reflection on me. And it's not a reflection on them either. It's just
life.
Yeah, they're busy. I'm a small fry thing in New Zealand. It's just how it is sometimes. So it's. So anyway, for the future, I'm starting to go, what else could this be? Yes, it can be a podcast. But maybe it can then branch out. I've done a couple of sermons based around this kind of concept, like preaching through the Lord's Prayer at different churches. And so maybe it can be something where I start to kind of put a thing together and go and speak at different places. Maybe it could be that we actually do some live events and get a panel of people coming in.
Oh, I love that idea.
And so a bunch of people, obviously, people in our local area, not people all around the country, but people in our local area could come along and, hear from the sort of people that I interview on the podcast, but in a live situation, which sometimes is just that little bit more inspiring when you're actually seeing the person, you're seeing them cry, you're seeing the expressions on their face, which you just can't do on a podcast. We do our best to kind of convey emotion, but so that's kind of some of the thoughts of where this could go.
Awesome.
And that's a bit of exploration for me to do over the summer when Business is a bit quieter in January because our business is just cranking at the moment.
Yeah, super cool.
Which, because we sell sprinkles and cake baking things, lots of people buy from us when their kids have birthdays, but it seems like you get to Christmas and they all buy at the same time. So, we're pretty flat out at the moment,
just love
which
that
is
I
great.
can make a really average cake and throw really amazing sprinkles on the top, and people are like, wow, look at that.
Win. Easy win. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I get to January, I'll start doing a bit more actual planning around that and start putting that out there to different people, different events, different churches, see what hits. And again, it's that sort of thing of, if I throw this out there and it works, great. And if I throw this out there and it doesn't work, I'll keep doing the things that do work.
You might be, really on the mark with your timing, because I feel like people are just so craving that face-to-face stuff again, and we are going to get there to that point where we can move a bit more freely again. Yeah. Can I ask a nosy question? Are you addicted a little bit to looking at the stats?
I do, I try not to too much because, again, like for me, it is all about if one person.
Yeah.
But it is nice to see, actually, I interviewed this person and actually not only have people listened to that, they've then gone and downloaded a bunch of the back catalogue.
Yeah.
And that's been really encouraging that there's people that have found value in, maybe someone they know has got interviewed and they've gone, oh, there's this thing I didn't know. And so what's been interesting to me is not so much how many people have downloaded, but what they've downloaded. And the fact that they've gone back and gone, oh, these ones, and picked some bits and pieces from throughout the 2 years of podcasts to be able to then listen to. And, even someone said to me, I'm getting through 10 minutes at a time, when my kids allow, but my mum's like binged all of them.
Oh, so
cool.
Go,
and it's
Liz.
It's like, so... that's what they were saying. Their mum.
Their mum.
Yeah.
I'm sure your mum's binged all of them too.
My mum's listened to all of them too. Thanks, Mum.
Mums are good for
thanks,
stats.
Dad.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I did go on one time and saw that I had 3,999 downloads, and I messaged the family going, nearly at 4,000, and Mum and Dad were like, okay, we'll listen to one now.
Oh, that's
and so they took me out, so they're like, are we your 4,000th listen? So that was pretty fun,
it's great to hear the vision behind what you're up to. That's really cool. Yeah. Okay, so I'm keen to ask now, one of the things that we connect over is both being parents.
Yeah.
And we know that kids are wonderful, and we both like them enough to have made 3 of them each.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine recently described parenting as a trauma, and I cackled from this place like deep in my soul about just how apt that was. And I just personally find so much solidarity in when people share about what is challenging for them as a parent. So Andy, what are the hardest parts of parenting for you?
I mean, the biggest thing in my journey is that up until I had kids, the anxiety and depression that has actually been part of my life since I was a kid was undiagnosed because I'd learned how to manage it. I found ways to kind of band-aid it. I wrote off sort of one-off events as just a random thing rather than seeing any patterns. Yet once we had kids, it just pushed all of the buttons. Like all of my trigger points just got smashed. And subsequently, I've learnt that things that I need to do to stay healthy involve having enough time to myself. Well, that, when you've got a newborn...
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. I mean, I used to go off to work and then I'd come home and I would sit in the car for 2 minutes just breathing because I knew that as soon as I walked in the door, Bex was done.
Here you go, hold this.
Have a baby. I'm done. I need some space. And it was going to be my job to go from my paid employment to my home employment.
Yeah.
And so that I just didn't get that time. And actually, if I look at it, after having Sophia, who was our first, I probably went through about 3 months of depression. Part of that was I'd also just finished my master's thesis, which was like a year and a half of project, and handed that in, and then like a month later she was born, or a little bit longer than that. And then I'd also gone from thinking, okay, I'm going to change the world now that I've done all this theological study, and then ended up back in the job that I'd left, knowing that's not what I wanted to do with my life, teaching in the sport sector, and going, oh, it was a real blessing there to have the job, but also it's not what I wanted to do with my life. So, you know, I had those two things in play, and then all the pressures that came with a newborn baby and the not knowing. You know, I like to know, I like to be in control. That's one of my trigger points for my anxiety is I had a trauma as a kid, and the belief that came from it was, when I'm not in control, bad things happen. And so I've just been a control freak my whole life.
Thou shalt stay in control.
Yeah. And you just can't.
Yeah.
When you've got a newborn, they'll cry and you have no idea why they're crying, and you can't stop them. There is nothing, like sometimes there's just nothing that you can do to stop them crying. And I've seen it with friends who've had kids in the last few months that you know, their first kid, and they're like, how do you stop your kid crying? I'm like, you don't, you know. Sometimes you do, you know, sometimes a cuddle works, sometimes a burp works, sometimes a feed works, sometimes none of the above work.
Yeah, and if only we knew which nights were going to be the bad nights.
But yeah, so then you're getting no time to yourself. Another of my things is making sure I get enough sleep. You know, having kids, you're just getting woken up all the time. So just one after another, it pushed my triggers. And so then you've got this idea of the parent that you'd like to be, and then you're not living up to that. And that's really hard as well. Is going, oh man, I thought that I was, you know, I saw other people parent and they yelled at their kids, and I'm like, I'm never going to do that. And
hello, here we are.
You know, I apologise to my kids several times a week, to be honest. Like for, you know, we say to them, even this morning, Sophia yelled at something and Beck said, you know, you don't yell at people. And she said, well, Dad yells at me. So, yeah, that is true.
Yeah. So let's go with the new family rule of when you yell at someone, then you apologise.
So, and it's one of those things of going, actually, I've had to realise that parenting is a journey just like everything else, and we're not going to get it all right. And I found that really hard because I want to be in control, and you just can't. And then you have another kid, and the pressures increase. And when we had Mackenzie, I got depressed again. You know, I had another, it was shorter that time, it was probably more like 3 or 4 weeks. And then by the time we had Cora, I'd been sort of diagnosed, I'd understood what was going on, and I still had a couple of weeks of depression, of just like not wanting to even do this anymore. And, you know, pretty bad, but at the same time, knowing that I now had tools to see the hope out the other side of it. And so that only lasted for sort of 1.5 to 2 weeks. And, you know, that's been a real big thing, you know, for all the joy that the kids bring. They just know how to push your buttons.
And I would have said I had really good mental health before having kids. And then, whoa, you know, the things that you just didn't even realise were there.
I think I've got a poem that is called What Having Daughters Has Taught Me, that was written back when the girls were like 3 and 4. And one of the lines is, girls who at my worst bring out of me feelings I didn't know I was capable of, but who at their best bring out of me feelings I didn't know I was capable of. And I think parenting is that kind of journey where it uncovers the worst of the worst about you, and the best of the best about you. You know, and you have these moments that are just like, I never thought I could love someone this much, but I also never thought I could be this angry with someone. You know, that I have never felt anger like I felt towards my kids when they've done things that just blow my mind in a negative way. And so learning how to process that well, because actually being angry isn't the problem. It's then how we outwork that. And so yeah, it's a journey, but it's worth it. You know, it's the hard things are hard, but man, it's worth it.
I would find myself often at the end of the day thinking back over my parenting day and thinking about all the things that I, you know, fell short on. You know, I missed this child's need, and I didn't respond well to this, and, I'm not on top of that, whatever it was, and I need to like Google strategies for this because what am I even meant to be doing with that behaviour or whatever it was. And one of the little tricks that I've learned for myself is, what do I want more of tomorrow? And so instead of doing those reviews that are quite berating of like, okay, and so this didn't go well and then that was a disaster, what do I want more of tomorrow and how do I make that?
Yeah.
And so for me, that's been such a key thing, is realising that every day with my kids has hard moments. And what I need to focus on is how do I make more of the good moments that hopefully on some days crowd out the difficult times. But, just it's such a huge mental health challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, I mean, there are just days where you're not in a good headspace to start with. And again, in that same poem, I say, when a lack of sleep and a moment's frustration give sharp edges to words that pierce skin not yet as thick as my own. And this idea that actually sometimes it's not even the kid's fault. It's that I've had a rubbish sleep. And I'm really tired. And they do something that irritates me that on any other day I would just not even notice. And suddenly I've said something that hurts them. And so I've had to keep coming back to, I thought I was going to be the sort of parent that was going to role model how to behave well. What I'm actually trying to do now is be the sort of parent that role models how to live well. And living well involves what we do when we stuff up. And how we deal with that. And, the fact that I do go and apologise to my kids and I sit them down and go, look, actually, not only am I sorry, but that was not okay. I just want you to know that was not okay, what I did. And I'm going to work really hard on trying to get better at that. And because I want them to be the resilient kind of people that when they don't achieve what they're trying to achieve, they behave in the way that they don't want to behave, within them, that actually they're going, but I can apologise, I can get better, we can keep this relationship. Because that's actually the most important, isn't it? The relationship part of it.
And so, nosy question, and I've got no idea what your answer to this is. Has counselling had a place in your mental health journey?
Yeah. My first involvement with counselling was when I was studying theology at Laidlaw, and they had some counsellors in training who had to do a certain number of hours, and so a couple of them did free counselling for the students. So that was my first go of, man, I'm having these moments of anxiety, and so it would be good to figure out how to do that. And all we really did over 4 weeks of that was find ways for me to recognise the feelings as they were coming and how to band-aid that. And at that time I thought that's what counselling did, just helped you manage what you had to deal with. Subsequently, I've then seen counsellors around when I really wasn't coping in the first job that I had down here in Christchurch, where I was managing a whole lot of guys that had experienced prison, and it was a really last minute kind of industry, and I'm a planner, so on all fronts it was just really hard. And again, I hadn't been diagnosed properly yet, and so I just thought it was something I wasn't dealing with very well.
And there goes that control thing again.
And so then I had some counselling sessions then just to help make it okay to be at work. And again, it worked, but it didn't get to the root of the problem. And I did some kind of lay counselling stuff through church, which, I don't know, more pastoral care, prayer kind of stuff than trained counselling. And that's the first time I'd really found a connection between the anxiety that I struggled with and the trauma that I had as a kid, which was watching my brother, when I was 6 or 7, I watched him ride a mini motorbike into a unused dog kennel and cut his face open on the corrugated iron roof, which was fairly traumatic. Not only that, but there were no adults around, so as a 6-year-old, I became the adult and had to get him back to the house, and and so and then of course Mum and Dad took him off to the hospital, left me with family friends, so while I'm in the biggest trauma of my life, Mum and Dad have gone, which I totally don't blame them for. That's what I would do as a parent. It's just what you needed to do. But at the same time, so that brought up other things for me, and so as I discovered all that, I thought, great, this is going to help me unlock this. What actually happened was, a couple of months later, I just ended up so unbelievably depressed.
Falling apart.
And just not coping with life. We were getting our house, the bedrooms plastered and painted, so we'd just moved everything into the lounge and then went and lived with Mum and Dad for a couple of weeks. And I remember coming out one morning and just saying to Mum, I just can't do this anymore. I need someone to fix me. And she said, oh, why don't you go to talk to the doctor? You know, the medication I'm on is really helpful. I was like, hang on, what?
Yeah.
You know, you're on medication. And somehow we just hadn't had that conversation. But that encouragement was all I needed. And I went and saw sort of a doctor counsellor who, his insight was, actually, the work you've done already is actually fantastic. But what it's done is it's knocked all the wheels off your false coping mechanisms. So you had all these things in place that kind of kept things in control. But having discovered what's really going on, those things no longer work. And that's why you're feeling like you're feeling now. And so I've been on medication for the last 4 years, which is just amazing. And I mean, medication's not for everyone, but you know, I'm not in a hurry to get off it. You know, it's making life manageable. And it's given me the chance to then do more counselling work in a way that doesn't make me fall apart. You know, I can now experience those unbearable feelings and talk about them and process them rather than running away from them, which is what I've done for my entire life. So, you know, as in my mid to late 30s, I basically had to start learning how to feel feelings, which is a really weird thing to say for, you know, when you're nearly 40. But yeah, how to feel feelings was
incredibly common. Gosh.
And so, you know, I'd controlled everything I could to stop feeling those feelings that I just didn't want to feel. And now I had to learn what to do with them when I did feel them. Because previously, when I had finally felt them, I'd exploded into anxiety or I'd hit depression or, you know. So it's just been amazing, actually. And the beauty of going to this particular doctor that I went and saw, who actually was one of my guests, Dr. Jeremy Baker on episode 7, who just has this amazing way. He brought spirituality and medicine together in a way that just made me wonder, as a Westerner, why the heck we ever separated them. Because there's pretty much no other culture in the world other than Western society that has separated medicine and spirituality, and yet we think it's progressive. You know, we've progressed by doing this, and it's like, well, actually, have we? But he managed to bring it back together and go, hey, look, this is kind of where you seem to be at spiritually. This is where you seem to be at emotionally. This is what's going on in your body medically. You know, so it wasn't just, oh, you just need to pray more. You know, like a lot of the church, you've got having a mental health struggle. It's like, well, have you prayed? It's like, no, I never thought of that. You know, and on the flip side, other people are like, well, just, you know, take medicine. It's like he was able to go, this is what's happening in your body. This is, that trauma means that these chemicals are happening. We'll get some medication to help you with that, and then let's keep processing this emotionally and spiritually. So yeah,
awesome.
It's, in terms of that, counselling is just fantastic. My brother's a counsellor as well, so you know, it's one of those things that I couldn't rate highly enough. I think finding the right one that fits you is really important. That it's not a one size fits all when it comes to counselling. That actually some of them are going to be just what you need, and others are going to be maybe helpful, but maybe not. You know, and in fact, I know people who have gone to the same counsellor, and one of them who just thinks they're absolutely amazing, and the other one who just wants to punch them in the face.
Totally.
You know, and it's because they had different needs. They had different ways that they operated, and what worked for one didn't work for the other. So.
Cool. Great to hear your journey with that. That's super cool. I'm going to do, before we wrap up, I'm going to do a this or that, because I know that's not your usual style, but I just want to do it because it's fun. So this or that, introvert or extrovert?
Introvert.
Prepared or last minute?
Prepared.
Air guitar or ear drums?
Oh, eardrums.
Holiday with kids or without?
Oh, without.
Aotearoa or New Zealand?
Aotearoa.
Save or spend?
Save.
And would you travel to a third world or first world country? Preference?
Yeah. Do you know, I went overseas when I was 10 to Sydney. And that was the last time I went overseas, and Bex has never been overseas.
Whoa.
When I was 2, I lived in Papua New Guinea for a year.
Yeah.
A year and a half, but yeah, it's funny, I've just never really had a desire to go overseas.
It's a big decision you're going to have to make.
If I did go overseas, I would love to go into Greece and Italy and look at all the biblical sites.
Yeah, cool.
Because I've done so much study of the ancient world in that area that I'd love to kind of sit in those spaces where that writing happened, and you know, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's probably where I'd go if I was going to do it, but you know,
cool.
I've got to wait till the kids grow up now.
Yeah. Beach or mountain?
Oh, mountain. I hate beaches.
Apple or Android?
Android.
And tell me, what's your favourite podcast that you're listening to at the moment?
Oh, I've got a few. I love the Bible for Normal People. It's a couple of scholars over in the States who are trying to make accessible a lot of academic work around the Bible that maybe isn't the sort of stuff that you would normally hear in a lot of churches, and maybe pushes you to think about the Bible in different ways. And so I love that. I love the way they do it. It's just lots of cool interviews. So that's a really big one I listen to. I listen to, or when it's in season, it's currently off season, one called The Confessional by Nadia Boltz-Weber. And she just gets people to come on and just tell us their worst story.
Wow.
And it's just like mind-blowing, these people.
Wow.
But also the healing that they find in doing that. And, you know, so there's been, you know, people that killed people in a drunk driving accident, and, you know, other people who scammed people out of millions of dollars, and just hearing their stories and going, wow, and yet it's got this tone of redemption in it. So that's beautiful. New Zealand-wise, probably the biggest two I listen to from a New Zealand point of view are 21 Elephants, which has got some great stuff on it, and In the Shift, which is a guy, Michael Frost, so the New Zealand theologian Michael Frost, not the Australian theologian Michael Frost.
Okay.
And he does a whole lot of, again, really good biblical stuff, asking the sort of questions that he was never allowed to ask growing up in church, and just wrestling with things in a different kind of way. So his sort of tagline is "When life and faith go off script," and you know, a big part of beginning it for him was them really struggling to have kids, and going, actually, I thought if I was following this faith thing, it was all going to be okay, and this is really not. You know, I don't know what to do with this. So yeah, those are some go-tos for me.
Cool. So just as we close, what would you like to say to your listeners as this year wraps up?
Yeah, I firstly just thank you so much for jumping on board with this journey, whether you've listened to one or whether you've listened to all 42 of them. I'm just so thankful that people are valuing it enough to want to invest their time, because essentially that's what you're doing. And I really hope that this is inspiring you the way it's inspiring me to go and do some good in the world. And if you get nothing else from all the conversations, you know, what I always want to come back to is, what are you doing with what you have, where you are? You know, we don't have to all leave our jobs and go to Africa to do good in the world. You know, you can do good right where you are. You can take your neighbour a meal. You know, you can say hi to someone who is looking really left out at a gathering. You know, there's so many ways we can do little things that just bring a bit of heaven for people. And so, yeah, just hopefully this is an encouragement to do that, and make sure if you enjoy it, make sure you tell your friends and your family about it. That's the only way this has grown, really. You know, I can do as much Facebook and Instagram stuff as I like, but the only way it grows is when people tell other people. So if you want to help out, that'd be a great way to do it. And have a wonderful Christmas, and we'll be back with some new material in the new year sometime.
Nice. Thanks for having me, Andy.
Hello, hello heaven. Will I hear you whisper to come near?
Well, that's a wrap for 2021. Thanks so much to Charlotte Cummings for taking over today. Charlotte is a counsellor and has her own practice, and I'll put links of how to find her in the show notes. She may even be launching her own podcast next year, so I'll keep you informed on that when it happens. To all my guests, thank you so much for giving yourself to inspire and encourage others, to be a light in dark places. You are all the most beautiful people, and the world is so much better for you being you in it. To all of you who have been listening this year, I appreciate you. You are such a blessing to me. Please get in touch with me and let me know if there's anything that's challenged or inspired you. Feedback is few and far between in the podcasting world, so if you have some, I'd love to hear it. Or if you have ideas of people who you see as bringing a bit of heaven down to earth who I should be chatting to. If you want to help support the podcast for 2022, I've got a Give a Little page running at the moment. Just looking to raise some of the running costs so I can keep this thing going without having to throw ads in your face or in your ears, I guess. But now, to all of you listening, here is a blessing for you. May you know the grace and love of the divine this Christmas season, especially if Christmas time brings a sense of pain and loss for you. May you find the good wherever you go, bringing light into dark spaces and making joyful spaces even more colourful. May you be the good wherever you go, always looking for ways to share goodness with those around you, and as you do, may you know heaven on earth in ordinary but extraordinary ways. May you be inspired and encouraged to know that who you are and what you have is enough to make a difference in the world, that the world is better for having you in it, that those around you are better for knowing you. And in every moment, may you know love bursting into your life and flowing out into the world around you. Thanks to Strahan for the music and Rangi for the karakia. Join me next year when I talk to another stack of amazingly ordinary humans who are doing what they can with who they are to bring a bit of heaven down to earth. Until then, me inoi tātou.
E tō mātou matua I te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tau mai tō rangatiratanga, kia mea te tau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua, kia rite anō ki tō te rangi. Humai kia mātou ai nei, he taro mā mātou mō tēnei rā. Muro mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muru nei I o te hunga, e hara ana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawea, kia whakawaia, engari whakaorangi a mātou I te kino.